Welcome back to Second Helping, the show of choice for fans and followers of the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com, part of the On3 network, joined as always by my great friend and co-host, Brent Beaird, longtime college football analyst for First Coast News down in Jacksonville, Florida. Brent, of course, also a voter for the most prestigious individual honor in all of collegiate athletics, the Heisman Trophy. And Brent, it's been a couple weeks. We took a little bit of a June break. Recruiting certainly didn't take a break in the month
No,
of June, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the program. But during the interim, since our last meeting here, more preseason mags, I guess, starting to roll in. I know that's always a great thing for you and the rest of us as college football fans. There you go. He's got that Phil Steele
yes,
2024 right there. That's a happy
yes,
guy right now in
that's
Brent
right.
Beard. So Brent, give us the preseason mag sort of update as we get going here.
Yeah, the Phil Steele, Lindy's National Edition and SEC Edition is out. Athlon is also out, and that basically is it. Trav, when you and I were first getting in the business, I mean, there are basically three main ones now, but we had about 10 of them, right?
Sporting News always had
Yes.
one that I looked forward to. I enjoyed the Sporting News annual back in the
Uh,
day.
yes, in Street and Smith,
Hmm.
Trav, you remember they had that the picture of the player on the front without one bar on
Yeah,
that helmet. That was it.
that was it. That was it. But kind of narrowed them down, but still some staples that you can count on
Yes.
when it comes to the college football mags. And Brent, let the record show when I'm in the grocery store, when I'm in the Publix, for example, and I go down that aisle with the magazines, I still stop. They still make me stop. I don't
Sure.
collect them. I don't buy them. I don't, consume them like you do, for sure, but they still make me
Yes.
stop on
Oh
aisle
yeah.
11 or whatever it is.
Oh yeah. And listen, no real surprises. The AP top 25 really will be coming from the magazines. I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Bama, Utah, Michigan, Miami. That's Phil Steele's top 10. The other magazines are somewhere in there, particularly with Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon also listed. So that's pretty much what we're going to be seeing the rest of the summer, and as these conference media days and the vote comes out, votes can be very similar to what we see in the magazines.
It seems to kind of follow suit with the preseason rankings and then also your all America teams and your
Yes,
all conference
yes,
teams. You can almost count on that, it seems like, in most years. Something that we are still very much looking forward to are those 2024 season openers. And with that, what we want to do today, in addition to looking at top running backs around the league for the 2024 campaign, and again, we'll get into some June recruiting talk as well. And then, of course, Brent's notebook. You talk about staples of this program. That certainly qualifies in that regard. But just wanted to go through this opening weekend for the Southeastern Conference. I guess a couple different ways to look at it, Brent. There's the marquee matchups, and then there's games that are really, really critical to the sort of path, the
yes,
projection for some of these
yes.
teams, and not just the teams, but a couple of head coaches around the league as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. And look, the two that really stick out to me would be Southern Cal and LSU on that Sunday night. And look, people may not realize this, but Trev, it's been more than a minute, as my daughters like to say, that LSU has won an opener. They've lost two to Florida State, as you pointed out recently. They've lost to UCLA. So I think this is big for them. And my oh my, Trav, is that opener in Gainesville with Florida and Miami humongous for both those coaches?
Absolutely. And we'll work through those here as we start on Thursday night, August the 29th. going to have a couple of games on that last Thursday in the month of August. Really, a couple matchups for Arkansas and Missouri. The only way that there's news really coming from
Yeah.
Arkansas's matchup with Pine Bluff and Missouri matching up with the Racers of Murray State is if somehow either of these games are competitive
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
or you sustain an injury of note if you're Arkansas and Missouri. When you look at those Thursday night games, ESPNU 7:30 Eastern for Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then on the SEC network, you'll have a highly anticipated Missouri team opening in Como against Murray State at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And how does Missouri, Travis, deal with playoff expectations? Obviously, Brady Cook coming back, Cody Schrader's not, Luther Burden is back. And even with Arkansas, I mean, they want to be better on the line of scrimmage, want to be more fluid with Bobby Petrino. But both these teams will win, and I'll flip back and forth all night long with both of them. But it's a little bit of a test. It's not much of one, but you said that well. It's like Gene Stallings was talking about a game of this magnitude when he was coaching Alabama. He said, "Well, if you don't think it's a big game, try losing it."
Exactly. And so you're right about Arkansas too, with Petrino in there to run that offense for a beleaguered Sam Pittman. You want to look crisp, you want to look efficient, you want to look improved, even at the quarterback position.
Yes,
With the
yes,
change there, you still want to look better than you were throughout the 2023 season, just about in every aspect, I'd say, of offensive football. So then we get into Friday night. Man, it really is a holiday weekend
yeah,
celebration of SEC football with Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league, and Oklahoma making its SEC debut against the Owls of Temple on a Friday night in Norman, 7 o'clock Eastern. That's going to be on ESPN. So kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude of this contest for the Sooners. Again, a game Oklahoma should certainly win, but you've got to change at quarterback with Jackson Arnold stepping in there. You're going to have some changes at the offensive coordinator spot too, with Jeff Lebby moving on to Mississippi State as the head coach. But the Sooners looking to make an early statement on that Friday night.
yeah. And they joined the conference along with Texas on July the 1st, which is next Monday, and they're making that a big deal. That they've got basically an all day long party on campus. I'm sure the network probably Travis will be there for that. I'm sure they're going to blow that out. I hadn't heard a whole lot from Texas what that they will do, but certainly with Oklahoma. And look, to me now, with Brent Venables getting that big raise and a little money to go along with it, they just said that was market value, right, Trav? But got to be some wins there. His record so far not really, really spectacular. Certainly want to see where that quarterback is. But for me, Oklahoma, it's all with the defense. They've got a defensive minded coaches, and Trev, that's got to get better, does it not?
It does. And the Venables deal kind of feels like Eli Drinkwitz when he got
Yeah,
that raise and
really,
extension. And we were thinking, wow, boy, they are betting on themselves a little bit here with their
yeah,
sitting head coach. And it feels like Oklahoma is doing some of that as well with Venables. Recruiting looks to be in a pretty good spot, I guess, for OU. So that plays into it as well, as we know. But then we get into Saturday and the slate of games. And it's impressive, man, when you start working through this, even
it
for
is.
Vanderbilt in that noon
Yes,
window
yes,
hosting the Virginia Tech Hokies coming down from Blacksburg for that season opener. Should be a warm one in Nash Vegas at noon Eastern, but big game for Clark Lee. We talk about coaches that really need to produce from the outset of the 2024 season. Even if Vanderbilt doesn't win this game, as massively as it has turned over its roster here in this offseason to go along with the soon to be completed facility and stadium
right.
enhancements and really renovation there, if you're Clark Lee, you need to show the decision makers, even at Vanderbilt, that you're the guy to sort of usher in that next phase of football for the Commodores.
And look, Virginia Tech, people may not realize this, they're making a bit of a comeback now. Phil still has them rated in the top 20. But Trev, I'll argue, and I bet you might join me. Vandy may have the better quarterback. Is that possible?
Diego, if he's behind center, my guy, I wouldn't bet against him at all.
No.
He is the Tijuana Tebow, I call
Yeah.
him. He is something else behind center. Hey, let's get into and stay with that noon window because I don't know how many eyeballs will be on Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech,
Yeah.
although at just
Really.
about any other time, a lot of
That's right.
folks would be interested in that game. But when you've got Georgia and Clemson in the noon window on ABC on that Saturday from Atlanta, Georgia, obviously, not just a matchup that sort of resonates nationally, but this is a traditional type of matchup when
It
you go
is.
back throughout the years and the games that Clemson and Georgia have had against each other. Georgia certainly feeling the sting after missing out on the most recent college football playoff, not winning an SEC title last December in the same building. Not exactly a building where Georgia's had a lot of great
No.
memories. You would
No.
think that would be the case in Atlanta, being right there next to Athens. But, Clemson making that short trip down 85, Dabo Sweeney needs to get this thing back on the,
Yeah.
the rails for the Tigers.
Dabo's been criticized a lot because of his lack of being willing to go to the transfer portal and understand that. Goodness, that they've got to be better offensively than they were last year. But Georgia's number one. They've got the talent, they've got the coaching, they've got everything that goes along with a preseason top pick. I get that. And listen, you will hear Georgia and Clemson people, Trav, that they're adamant about this. They think they need to play every year or at least a lot more regularly than they're playing now.
Wow. That would be a lot of fun if we could
It
bring
really
that to
would.
fruition. Absolutely. Also, right afternoon Eastern on Saturday, August the 31st, Chattanooga going to make the short trip up to Knoxville, pick up a paycheck and an
Yeah.
L
Yeah.
from the Vols, who much anticipation for Josh Heupel's next team. It's an excited fan base after the baseball Vols win a national championship out in Omaha. Nico Alamaliva steps in as the starting quarterback. But as much as anything, it sounds like there is the expectation that defensively Tennessee might be ready to take a big step.
Yeah. And they really need to do that. And I give them credit. Last year, they didn't have the quarterback. Milton was not really where they needed to go, but they did. But I give Josh Heupel a lot of credit. They changed from trying to throw the ball down the field where Milton was most inaccurate to, well, let's just run the ball and use our front seven on defense to get a near record tackles for loss. So I'm with you. If they can put a good secondary together, they're very excited about Nico. It could be a really good season in Knoxville. Although the Tennessee beat writers would tell you they think they may fall just short of the playoffs.
Yeah, some of these teams that are in these non-marquee games in week 1 and maybe even week 2, they have games coming in week
Yeah.
2,
Oh, yeah.
week 3. So don't look at some of these games and think, wow, they're just going to ease right into SEC play. For most of these teams, even if the opener isn't uh, especially stressful, they do have matchups in week 2 and week 3 that are certainly going to get them in that mindset. So we talk about the 3:30 window, and boy, you said it earlier. In terms of importance, if we were just talking about most important openers for SEC teams, I'd have a hard time looking past Miami for Florida, and
Yeah.
especially Billy
Oh, yeah.
Napier as he tries to sustain here going into year 3. The Hurricanes offensively look to be stout. Cam Ward coming in there at the quarterback position. Florida, I think, offensively going to feel pretty good about itself, not just at quarterback, but even with Etienne. moving on to Georgia. You still have some options that we'll talk about in the backfield coming up a little bit later. But yeah, just in terms of critical nature of an opener, this one is right there at the top of the list for the
I
Gators.
think what I want to see from Florida, Trav, is that defense going to be better. I mean, I like Austin Armstrong. I like his energy. He's barely 30, if he's even 30. But look, with the guys like Xavier Restapro from Miami, Trav, what you don't want to see at the end of the game is 12 catches for 190 yards. So that will be the one I'm looking for as much as anything else. I think Graham Mertz in this Florida offense is going to be pretty solid, but can that defense for the Gators be better?
I think there's going to be points in that one.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely, between these two offenses and these two quarterbacks. Really, really like the guys pulling the trigger for both these teams in that season opener in what should be an absolutely sweltering Gainesville, Florida. You know, we usually talk about pops late in the show, but I went to a Miami, Florida season opener back around 82 or so with pops. Jim Kelly was your starting quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes with Howard Snellenberger as the head coach. And you had Wayne Peace was your quarterback for the Florida Gators of Charlie Pell, as you might recall.
Yes.
Boy, that you talk about hot, and that was in the days of the artificial turf at the swamp. It was a gazillion degrees. Absolutely.
And Trev, was Howard on the sidelines with that
think
coat
so.
and tie on too?
I don't know if he had the coat, but I think he still had the tie over there. I don't
sure
think he was smoking the pipe. I don't think he was smoking the pipe during that one. But oof, Pops stayed hydrated and cool by mixing Bacardi rum with Coca-Cola during that game.
Yes.
Proper hydration for Pops, as I recall it all those years ago. Speaking of openers of entry, Texas enters the Southeastern Conference officially on that Saturday, August the 31st, with what should be a warm one in Austin. 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local time for the Longhorns and the Rams. Going to have Longhorns and Rams together there in Austin, Texas. And talk about anticipation. With everything, all the pieces that Texas brings back, I think maybe we've overlooked a little bit some departures on the defensive side, especially up front for Texas, as we saw in the NFL draft. And not just that, but Bo Davis leaves Texas, the defensive line coach for LSU. Still mega, mega high expectations for Sark and his team going into the season.
Yeah, as evidenced by Phil Steele having them in the top 5. I mean, when we know Quinn Ewers will be good. Arch Manning may see a little bit of action in this game too. Point well taken. Had you replaced DeAndre Sweat, Trav, who's about 350 and you can move faster than a linebacker, that will be interesting to see. But Texas needs to work out some kinks with this one because, as you said earlier, Michigan and Texas won't be far behind.
Yep. Week 2 for some of these teams is going to usher in some reality checks, and that will be a road game to Ann Arbor for the Texas Longhorns on the immediate horizon. We'll talk about South Carolina here in the mid to late afternoon window of August the 31st. 4:15 kickoff Eastern on SEC Network against the Monarchs of Old Dominion. This game has me a little uneasy for Shane Beamer. Certainly a game I expect South Carolina to win, but how it sort of looks in doing so. And then, just offensively, some key pieces that I need to see from the Gamecocks to feel even a little bit better about Beamer's footing and kind of the direction of that program in general.
Listen, I'm curious if you've heard the same thing. I think there's some concern about this situation. Now, you won't see that from him at media days, but for instance, 4-star quarterback Landon Duckworth has decommitted from South Carolina. He's from Jackson, Alabama, been committed since last August. But Trev, of all the SEC teams, maybe besides Vanderbilt, I sense the less amount of enthusiasm for that program right now. And I'm not saying he's going to get fired at the end of the year, but I don't think it would be too bad to say that this is an important year for Shane Beamer.
Absolutely. And there were some things that I'll give Shane Beamer credit for, like being able to bring in Sean Elliott as an
Yes,
assistant from a head coaching spot at
right.
Georgia State, where Sean Elliott had done a really nice job in Atlanta. To be
Agreed.
able to bring him in at the assistant level, I thought was a good move. Sean Elliott has worked at South Carolina in the past. I believe he was the interim for Spurrier when
Yeah,
Spurrier checked out into retirement during the season. So, I give him credit for that, but I also, because of how I have this tendency to try to think 2 or 3 moves ahead,
yeah,
I can
yeah,
kind of envision Sean Elliott in a second interim
yeah.
stint.
Really.
If things don't go well, I can see
Mhm.
Sean Elliott as the next head coach
Yeah.
at South Carolina. So, just some things to keep an eye on, but no doubt
Yes.
uh, the wins are going to be tough to come by, I think,
Really
for
are.
South Carolina. So
Yeah.
you absolutely better take advantage of the situation with ODU in the opener. Also on that Saturday, August the 31st, 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus, the Jeff Lebby era in Starkville gets underway. The Colonels of Eastern Kentucky coming down to pick up a paycheck. Again, another team that looking to the transfer portal for help at the quarterback
Mhm.
position with Mississippi State.
Yeah.
The expectation obviously is going to be for Lebby very quickly to put a much better offense on the
Yeah.
field than what
Oh,
we saw from the
man.
one and done campaign with Zach Arnett in 2023. So ESPN Plus, a lot of us may not actually see it, but still important for Lebby because we talked about the schedule too in recent weeks, recent shows. You talk about Florida's schedule, which is pretty brutal, but I'd put Mississippi State's up there too.
I agree. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. And Florida plays Mississippi State in September, which is going to be an important game for both these teams. Jeff Levy's done a good job recruiting. I give him credit for that, but it is an adjustment. But you hit on it. They really had an identity with the air raid with Mike Leach's situation. Unfortunately, we miss him still. Last year for them was just a disaster with Will Rogers really being out of place. So they need to get off to a good start. Levy will be obviously on his honeymoon, but at the same time, these are games you need to win, and you need to win going away.
Yeah, you do. You got to take care of business here. And speaking of anticipated debuts, what about Kalen DeBoer? Saturday night, 7 Eastern from Bryant Denny Stadium on ESPN. The Alabama Crimson Tide, for the first time since 2006, will take the field with a head coach not named Nick
Yeah,
Saban. Kind of interesting. Saban in 2007 got his Alabama tenure going against Western Carolina in
yeah,
Tuscaloosa.
yeah.
It'll be Western Kentucky for Kalen DeBoer. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, too. Couple of games for Alabama, maybe to figure some things out
Sure.
before going to Wisconsin. But
Yeah.
even South Florida in week 2 in Tuscaloosa could have some intrigue to it. But again, all eyes on Kalen DeBoer as he steps in for Nick Saban here.
Well, and as you said really well a few minutes ago, and looking a few spaces ahead, Trev, early September to me is all about Georgia, is it not? It's to get who can we get in place ready to play against Georgia. But it will be a fascinating opener in a lot of ways. Nick Saban left an incredible amount of talent, but Kalen DeBoer, as you have written, has really they've done a really good job recruiting. They've been off the charts for frankly picking up commitments in the month of June. It's going to be fascinating to see this offense. Still, obviously, some concerns about the defense and the secondary, but I still say this team is still going to be much better than people think it is. There's not going to be a great drop off between last year and this year.
No, I'm with you. I think the trip to Camp Randall is going to be interesting too in week
It will
3
be.
to take on Wisconsin in that early kickoff against the Badgers of Luke Fickell. Also in the season opener slate we're working through here, the Auburn Tigers going to host Alabama A&M. A&M coming down from Huntsville. Pick up a paycheck. This is an ESPN Plus, SEC Network Plus broadcast at 7:30 Eastern on August the 31st. I guess for Auburn, Peyton Thorne is going to be at the quarterback position. You think so anyway.
Yeah.
Jarquez Hunter is going to be a real threat
Mm-hmm.
once again at the running
Yes.
back position. But a lot of interest, and understandably so, given the struggles Auburn had on the outside as far as playmakers, receivers, the injection of talent that Hugh Freeze has been able to oversee at those spots. And then also, I think on defense, it may be a little bit overlooked, the quality of play, primarily at the corner type positions for
Yes.
Auburn, in the defensive backfield and how they're going to go about replacing some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've done well in recruiting too. I mean, they flipped Alvin Henderson, who was a running back from Penn State. They're in the top 10 in recruiting with a lot. So give them credit with that. Look, to me, the thing they've got to be able to do, as we've chronicled on here, they've got a brutal schedule about the middle of the season on. So they really need to take advantage. And one of the craziest things I've ever seen, but I think Auburn's done this before, basically every game, they've got like 5 straight home games to start the year, no home games in October, which is virtually unheard of, and then back with some difficult games in November. So these early games, Trav, are going to be important not only to work out some of the kinks, but to pile up some W's before things get tough later.
Absolutely. You want to open an era as a head coach. How about Mike Elko, Texas A&M?
Yeah.
Going to welcome Notre Dame Saturday night, August the 31st, 7:30 Eastern kickoff on ABC. We talk about Florida, Miami, and as far as marquee matchups, if you just want to rank them that way, I think your 3 that you'd really be looking at are Miami, Florida, Texas A&M,
Yeah.
Notre Dame, and then a game we'll talk about on Sunday night coming up here in just a little bit. But a heck of a way for Mike Elko to get things going with the Aggies.
Yeah, and game day is going to be there too, so that will make it more interesting. But this will be a huge win for A&M if they can be able to get it. I still like that quarterback room. Connor Weigman, we don't know how healthy he is. We'll find out coming up in media days in a couple of weeks. But Elko has been very open about he thinks he's got an NFL-like defensive line. And look in this league,
even with LT Overton going to
yeah,
Alabama and Walter Nolan going to
yes,
Ole Miss, I mean, that's saying something with the
it
departures.
is.
A couple of the departures they've had.
And listen, one thing I've learned from you when we first got started is if you're a head coach in your first year, you might want an experienced defensive line, even almost as you do your quarterback.
Even in 2024, man. If
Yes.
you're both lines of scrimmage, really.
Yeah.
But if you're good up front defensively in year 1 and you're a defensive minded head coach anyway,
Right.
then you
Right.
really know what to do with those guys,
Yes. Absolutely.
And that's Mike Elko. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Kentucky on that Saturday night, 7:45 Eastern on SEC Network, going to host the Golden Eagles of Southern Mississippi, coming up from Hattiesburg. And Kentucky, once again, quarterback going to be a storyline as
Yep.
Mark
Yep.
Stoops goes to the portal for Brock Vandergriff, previously of the University of Georgia. Let's see if the Wildcats can continue that touch with the quarterback position where the portal is concerned.
And Vandergrift's going to be huge for them. They were, to their credit, last year when they couldn't throw the ball, they could run it. Now, are they going to be able to do that again this year? A little bit concerned about the defense, but Kentucky still traveling all the preseason magazines is very much a top 25 team, which tells you that Mark Stoops continues to recruit well. And look, they were talking about him going to A&M. If he wants to go somewhere later, I think he will. But he may hang in. And I can tell you, if he does, one day he'll have a statue of himself outside that stadium.
Yeah, it'll be tough to deny Mark Stoops of that. And boy, you think about legacies, his brother Bob
Yeah.
at the University of Oklahoma, and with what Mark has done, that Youngstown Mafia has produced
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
very good head coaches around Power Five football, no doubt about that. Southern Cal and LSU in Vegas. I was just out in Vegas a couple of weekends ago, and I kept sort of referring to friends about, this is going to be a ton of LSU people in Vegas
Yeah.
in a couple of
Yeah.
months. That's just incredible to think about.
Right.
The Tiger fans taking over Vegas, but it's going to happen, and certainly that Sunday night game on Labor Day weekend. As we've said, Labor Day weekend hasn't been especially kind to LSU. Credit to
No.
LSU, though, for
No.
consistently putting itself in position of playing in these Sunday, Monday type of games on that weekend against really high profile opposition. Similar colors from Florida State this time around, but it'll be Lincoln Riley's Trojans looking to move past the Caleb Williams era. Behind center, looks like Miller Moss will be the quarterback. Both these teams going to have new starting
Yeah.
quarterbacks and stepping in for very, very high profile top five
Yeah.
kind of
Yes.
picks at the quarterback position for both these teams, Brent.
Oh yeah, and Garrett Nussmeier, it's his turn, and I think he'll be fine. I like Nussmeier for making things happen. And again, as we said earlier in the opening, LSU really needs to win this game. I mean, they've lost like 4 openers in a row. To your credit, in saying they are playing tough competition, but those Tiger fans are getting tired of seeing L's up there. Now, Bo Davis is going to help them, but even the LSU media will tell you they don't have the players yet on defense. They've got the coaching staff. Blake Baker comes over from Missouri. I think that's going to be important for them. And by November, that may be rather nasty by then, but they've still got a lot of recruiting and developing to do. But we got to give Brian Kelly credit, don't we? He what he said is our problem is on defense, and we've got to fix it, and they're taking steps to do that.
And SC's got questions on defense. I mean,
Yeah.
Bear Alexander, previously of Georgia, transferred
Yes.
out to SC a couple of years ago. He's kind of the bell cow for that defensive front, but there's not a lot of quality depth right there. Right now, they brought in Eric Henderson, kind of like LSU brought in Bo Davis. You
Yeah.
understand the importance of defensive line coaches when
Absolutely.
you see Lincoln Riley go to the LA Rams to poach or bring in
Yeah.
Henny at a high price tag. Bo got big money to leave
Yes.
Texas and come home to LSU. So defensively, that's where I think you got concerns for both these teams. SC really hit the transfer portal hard, also in the secondary. And even with the changes at quarterback, I think Miller Moss will be fine for SC. I
Mhm.
like SC's wide receivers. I think LSU, conversely, there's talk about, wow, Malik Neighbors, the NFL, Brian Thomas Jr. to the NFL, but Kyron Lacey, and there's still going to be weapons for Garrett Nussmeier, and especially working behind that offensive line. Um, yeah, I think the Tigers will be just fine offensively.
And Trevor, real quick, by game time for the Southern Cal game, will Emory Jones have transferred out again? Running back coming from UCLA.
Yeah, yeah, or John Emery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
John, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. That's been wild with him for the
Yeah,
last 3 or 4 years,
it really has, hasn't
trying
it?
to
Yes.
figure out exactly what that guy, where he's going to be,
Yeah.
what he's going to be doing. Hey, and speaking of running backs, Brent, I wanted to ask you about top 3 running
Yeah.
backs for the SEC in 2024. And, I think for me, there's a top 3 going into the season when I think about Trevor Etienne transferring
Yes.
to Georgia from
Yes.
Florida. I think about Jarquez Hunter at Auburn. And I think about even a guy like Montrell Johnson of Florida. even with Etienne moving on. And maybe that had something to do with Etienne,
Yeah.
not wanting to share it as much. I think
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
Montreal Johnson, Florida can be just fine. And then I think about there's a ton of breakout
Boy, there
candidates at the
really is.
running back position because there's a pretty good bit of turnover at the spot within the SEC, especially when you think about Texas coming in, Oklahoma coming in.
Yes.
Um, so let's work through that list. When you think about the top running backs in the SEC for the upcoming season, where does the list kind of start for you?
ETN at Georgia to me is where it starts. And I don't think Kirby's going to be shy about using him and getting him what, Trav, 20 touches in the game. That may be a bit much, but I don't think there's any way that Kirby will undervalue and underutilize ETN. Do you?
No, I think he's going to get plenty of usage out of him, even with Carson Beck back at
Yeah.
quarterback and some promising weaponry at the other positions, even with Brock Bowers moving on and some attrition at wide receiver. Yeah, I think Etienne, you bring him in, perhaps even to incorporate into some of the return game, just different
Yeah.
ways that you can get him touches. I think Jarquez Hunter is probably the undervalued
Yes.
guy.
Yes.
Um, because Auburn, frankly, just hasn't had that level of success, but he's certainly
Right. Right.
capable of a huge season.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Florida's going to run the football, even with
yes,
Graham Mertz at quarterback. So I like that situation for Montreal. Rocket Sanders. You talk
yes,
about a guy who is tethered to a team and offense's hopes.
no doubt.
Rocket Sanders going from Arkansas to South Carolina. That's huge for the Gamecocks. But, like I said, I also think about some potential breakout candidates. And again, no shortage because you got CJ Baxter of Texas. You got Justice Haynes of Alabama to go along with Jam Miller, that
Yeah,
combination in
yeah,
Tuscaloosa. You got a really nice running back situation at Texas A&M with Le'Veon Moss and also Reuben Owens in that room. I think Jabari Small, Jalen Wright moving on from Tennessee is something to note, but Dylan Sampson looks like he can
yeah.
be that
Texas,
next
yeah,
guy. Dylan Sampson of Tennessee. I'll give you another guy too, Gavin Sawchuk. We talk about the
yeah.
new teams coming in. Gavin Sawchuk of Oklahoma finished the 2023 season with 5 straight 100-yard games. So you're going
Hmm.
to think about Jackson Arnold in that cornerback position, but if there is an anchor going into the season, I might say it's Gavin Sawchuk and
Yeah,
what we saw from him to end last season.
yeah. Look, and I agree with all those. And I'm going to throw Justice Haynes and also Jamar Miller in there.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely convinced. I think if Haynes had carried the ball about 10 more times, Alabama may have beaten Michigan. I think those two guys were that good. And how you can, man, live Trav, how you can utilize guys like they've got power, they've got speed. If you can get them in between the linebackers, boy, how much pressure does that take off an offense?
Yeah, I'm with you. Just the run game in general for Alabama against Michigan felt underutilized by the end of that one. They had some things happen situationally that kind of
Yeah,
got them off of it. In the fourth quarter of that game, they were driving it down and it looked like they could go up 24-13 because they were running it.
right,
And then they
right.
had like a substitution penalty that got
Yeah.
them
Oh,
off
yeah.
schedule. And that was huge in that game and how it kind of changed things. But yeah, Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Richard Young's a young back. We
He
could do this
is.
by running back rooms. If we did that, I think you talk about Ole Miss. I mean,
Sure.
uh, even with
Absolutely.
even with Quinshawn Judkins going to
Yeah.
Ohio State, Ulysses Bentley comes back, Logan Diggs comes in, Henry Parrish comes in from LSU and Miami, respectively, for that Ole Miss offense. That's a good looking room too.
Yeah, it is. But this is a league still as good as the quarterbacks are that they can run the ball, and the teams who do it can control the clock, and that's going to make a huge difference this year. That's going to be a lot of fun to see where this run game plays out.
Yeah, if you're enjoying the content, by the way, we encourage you to subscribe to the channel here. Maybe give us a like as well. Hit that thumbs up, turn on those notifications. You'll get each and every edition of second helping as it drops at Reier on YouTube. Hey, Brent, it's a lot of fun talking running backs, but we are going to talk some June recruiting. You kind of alluded to it earlier. Just a crazy month this has turned into, man.
Oh yeah,
This was a month when
absolutely.
we used to go on vacation. With my work at Bama Online, it has been as busy as a
Yeah,
month during the season. Alabama, specifically 9 commitments for Kalen DeBoer in the
yeah.
month of June. And June ain't over yet. And I will
No,
not be
no.
surprised if Alabama adds a couple more, at least before we get to July. So we've been doing this a long time, man. We first got together 31 years ago in
Yeah,
this stuff,
yeah.
and how much it has changed. I know the college commissioners recently were presented with the potential to implement a June signing date. That has been tabled. They're not going to go that route as of right now, but I don't know if ever changing does justice to what we've seen
No.
here over the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, and to dovetail with what you're saying, there's also legislation about we had 60 days for the transfer portal, cut to 45, and Trev now it may be cut to 30. So
Yeah, it needs
uh,
to be.
yeah, it does. I agree with that totally. But to your point, and look, it's very obvious that the offensive line, what was a what was a real point of concentration for Alabama. Jackson Lloyd, Micah DeBose, Michael Carroll, Mo Waldrip. I mean, those are just some guys who have committed lately. Dawson Merritt, who's a four-star linebacker that's come up, and even some of the guys who've been committed for a while. How about Keelan Russell at quarterback winning the MVP of the Elite 11? I think there's no question anymore about now that Nick Saban has stepped aside, can Kalen DeBoer's staff recruit?
Yeah, they've done a heck of a job with Courtney Morgan in there as the general manager and just a staff that seems to get it. Nice mix of some guys that have regional ties, both in terms of the on the field staff and support staff members. It's been impressive, but I think you're also going to see a team like Georgia finish
Yeah.
with a strong, strong run because some guys, some Georgia guys like Justice Terry, a 5-star defensive lineman, some others that were previously committed elsewhere, USC primarily. Now we're seeing these guys back off those commitments. And when it's all said and done,
Mm-hmm.
I think Georgia is going to end up in a great spot with more than a few of those players. And Kirby's never going to be caught without talent, I don't
Oh
think. He learned
no, no.
he learned from the best in that regard. I kind of go both ways on the June signing date thing.
Mhm.
Um, Part of me thinks, well, a lot of these schools already have 18 to 20 kids committed. Why not let them go ahead and sign? But now, with what a national letter of intent really means anymore, does it
Yeah,
matter if you
yeah,
sign
really.
them? You're still going to feel like these coaching staffs and these support staffs feel right now. You're going to have to keep recruiting these kids all the way through December, really all the way until they're enrolled.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not just recruiting them until signing date anymore. It's recruiting them until they show up on your doorstep.
Well, and they're looking now at maybe even three signing periods. You mentioned that like the last Wednesday in June, and that's still kind of a little bit up in the air. The Wednesday following the regular season, which would be obviously the Wednesday before the conference championship games, as well as the first Wednesday in February. But the thing they've done more than anything else is they have gotten this complicated mess they had in December. They're cleaning that up a little bit, Trav, where even as good as these coaches are and their staffs, you're limited in what you can do at some point. So if you can fix this stuff, just go ahead and do it. But look, I'm with you. I've always thought there should be a signing period in the summer to where if some of these guys want to get it over with for their senior year, and as some SEC coaches have said in the past, most famously, if we can get an early signing period, that means we can start babysitting them. Well, I think in today's world, I'm not sure you ever stop that, do you, Travis?
No, I think all the safeguards are coming off too now. All the
Yeah.
the training wheels that we've had in college football throughout the years, like number of staff that are allowed to work directly in practices and in games with players. We're seeing that go too. I mean,
Yeah,
now it's going to
yeah,
be analysts, grad assistants,
yes,
support
yes,
staff. Anyone and everyone on your staff is going to be allowed, it sounds like, to be able to
yes.
work practices and games. And, it's all kind of been a facade anyway, in a
It
lot of
is.
ways, especially this time of year when you get into the summer and supposedly voluntary
Yeah,
workouts and,
yeah,
and
right.
things like that. Hey, let's get into Brent's notebook before we get out of here on the latest edition of Second Helping. Brent, you got a couple of items of interest you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'll mention for and particularly also in the SEC with Texas coming in. I thought this was interesting. The Longhorn Network really never was caught on, but Learfield has announced a new free streaming version of the Longhorn Network will launch this year. I remember Mac Brown when he was at Texas. They asked him, Coach, what do you think of the Longhorn Network? And he said, we really struggled in just getting content for the Longhorn Network. So people have asked if it's going to still be around. It will now in more of a limited version. How about that?
Wow. And look, the advent of the conference networks like the SEC network and the Pac-12 network, the Big Ten network, the Pac-12
Right.
network of all of those, along with the Longhorn network,
Yeah.
probably the worst. The
Yeah.
Pac-12 network
Yeah.
was awful because, especially in basketball, I mean, you'd have premier Pac-12 matchups in, say, hoops, and the distribution is what's bad too with a lot of these.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
How you can get
Absolutely.
it, and then when we went to so much streaming, that adaptation wasn't really made. But we'll see what happens with the
Oh, yeah.
Longhorn Network moving forward. Anything else, Brent?
Yeah. Lane Kiffin is in some rarefied air since 1930. Only 7 Ole Miss football coaches have coached into a fifth season, and Lane has never been a head coach or offensive coordinator anywhere for four full seasons until now. So Lane digging in a little bit, Trav, and when they up the ante and you're making near 10 million, you can do that, can't you?
You can do those kind of things, no doubt. We're not making 10 million here on Second Helping, but we're still having a lot of fun. We hope you are as well. Again, if you're enjoying the content, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Turn on the notifications. You'll get all of these as they drop. Well, Brent, always a lot of fun. Great to catch up after a brief
Absolutely.
respite. I think we'll be a little more consistent here as we got these conference media days on the immediate
Yes.
horizon. It's
Yes.
all about to happen, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and Trev, as we go out, give us about a minute on was Pomp's behavior during summer vacation exemplary every day?
Yeah, it was almost concerningly
Oh
just really, really calm and collected.
wow,
I don't know. He's 76 years old. He
yeah,
still has it in him. He can still
yeah,
bring it out from time to
right,
time. You still don't always know exactly what he's going to say or when he's going to say it. But he was good. He was really good. We had a good trip. Good to catch up with family down at Crescent Beach, excuse me. And it was a lot of fun but ready to get back and ready to start pushing forward. I think he is too, to another football season. I think he's
yes,
excited about that. It keeps him going,
yeah,
That
absolutely,
that and maintaining his yard. Those are
yeah,
the things that
yeah, yeah, and some Gunsmoke reruns, I'm sure.
yeah, the
So
shoot 'em ups. He likes to stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning watching the old shoot 'em up. So,
yeah,
all right,
yeah,
Brent, we'll do it again soon, my man.
enjoyed it, bud. Take care.
For Brent Beaird, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us right here on Second Helping, the show of choice for fans and followers of the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Until next time, so long, everybody.